What a time to be alive. The forces of Magnus Blinde and Sigurd Slembe has finally been dealt with, and the brother kings Inge and Sigurd is now ruling the land. And Norway sees a brief time of peace. But trouble is brewing. Welcome to the second part of the Norwegian Civil War. But before we begin, we have to take a step back, because I have made an error. In my last episode about the Civil War period, I didn't mention any women, and that was a grave mistake. You see, there was one woman that has made an incredible mark on this Civil War period, and that is Ingerid Ragnvaldsdatter, the wife of Harald Gille. Ingerid was daughter of Ragnvald and the granddaughter of Inge Stenkilsson. And granddaughter of Inge Stenkilsson, the king of Sweden who united several provinces into one Swedish kingdom. Her parents died when she was very young, and she was married away to the king of Denmark at the time. His name was Henrik Skadelår, and not long after their marriage, Henrik died at the Battle of Fodevik against the usurper Erik Emune, who then became king. Apparently, this was the first time horses was used in warfare in Danish history. When Harald Gille had to flee the Battle of Fyrileiv in 1134, he fled to Denmark to gather forces. Here he likely met Ingerid Ragnvaldsdatter, and the two allegedly fell in love and got married shortly after. After their marriage, the two get the little boy Inge. Could Inge be named after Ingerid's grandfather? Now, sadly, Ingerid Ragnvaldsdatter and most women in history from the Viking Age and the medieval ages are not that much referred to in the sagas. This makes it so that the historians will have to look for more subtle references to where Ingerid and the other women of the Norwegian sagas could have played influence. But it is highly believed that Ingerid Ragnvaldsdatter had a leading role with all the high-standing people of Norway at the time. After Harald Gille's death, it is said that Ingerid led the movement to get Inge and Sigurd in power. She led Inge to the council in Borg, where he was anointed king of Norway, whilst other men took Sigurd to the council in Trøndelag, Øyrating, where he was anointed king of Norway. And now we get into what we talked about in the last episode. If you want to see that in detail, go and click the link below. But we are left with the two kings, Inge and Sigurd, being the brother kings of Norway. The two kings ruled together in harmony for around 3 years, mostly due to the lords around them advocating for peace. Ding dong! From the west and the great nation of Scotland arrives Øystein Haraldsson, the third son of Harald Gille.
Øystein never had to prove that he was related to Harald Gille. This was due to the fact that Harald had actually been very vocal about him having a son in Scotland.
So Øystein was very quickly crowned king at Øyrating, the council in Trøndelag, and the three kings allegedly lived together in harmony for many years to come. Again, remember that the lords were still advocating for peace. We have now entered the 1150s, and now it's starting to get a little more spicy. You see, the two children kings, Inge and Sigurd, have now grown up, and the lords who advocated for peace have all but passed away. The new lords for the three kings' courts were not as happy about peace. They wanted more power and dominance over the others. And the two most prominent lords that we're going to talk about today is in Inge Krokryggs court, mainly Gregorius Dagsson and Erling Skakke. Now we're going to talk about Erling Skakke later. So just take a look at this guy right here. Remember him. Lock him in your brain. You got him? Good. Let's move on. The person we're going to talk about most today is Gregorius Dagsson. He was probably one of the lords at the time who held the most power in all of Norway. King Inge Haraldsson was dubbed the nickname Inge Krokrygg. Krokrygg roughly translates to hunchback. This is because when Inge was a baby, He was strapped to the back of a soldier who fought in a battle against Sigurd Slembe and Magnus Blinde. And I don't know if you've ever seen a medieval soldier fighting in battle, but it would probably look something like this. And this gave him the damages that caused his back to be hunched. This is just alleged. There's no actually clear evidence of this happening, but it said so in the sagas. Due to Inge Krokryggs handicap, he probably didn't have that much physical presence in a room, but he was still described as beautiful and a nice person, though he was weak in health. King Sigurd was described as a very, very, very handsome man, except for his ugly mouth. That's why he got the nickname Sigurd Munn. Munn being translated to mouth. He was also described as very horny and very ill of temper.
Øystein Haraldsson didn't get any nickname. This is probably due to the fact that he likely didn't have any physical disabilities. Now, where Øystein's brothers Sigurd and Inge Krokrygg had a shared Kingsguard, Øystein was an adult when he came to Norway, and he took his own Kingsguard. This likely weakened Sigurd's power in Knardal, where Øystein and Sigurd mostly resided.
Gregorius Dagsson proved to be Inge Krokryggs' best friend and most important general. He used his time in Inge's court, consolidating power the best he could. He even got lords of opposing families to Inge Krokrygg to swear fealty to the king instead of the other two. This consolidation of power likely is the leading factor to the beginning of the feuding between the three kings.
Here we also begin to see some religious aspects of this civil war period. You see, the cardinal of the newly founded Norwegian church province seemed to like King Inge way more than the two other brothers. This is not just because King Inge was the one actual likable person of the three brothers, it's also because King Inge was the only of the three who was born within wedlock.
The two other kings, Øystein Haraldsson and Sigurd Munn, did not like this imbalance in power that was starting to show throughout Norway. So they put their heads together and started to figure out a plan to stop Inge Krokrygg from taking all the power in Norway. The tension between the two sides that now had formed were rising, and it all came to a breaking point when the kings Sigurd Munn and Øystein Haraldsson planned a meeting with King Inge Krokrygg in Bergen. Here, Sigurd and Øystein planned to dethrone Inge Krokrygg. Here, Ingerid Ragnvaldsdatter is finally mentioned in the sagas again. It is said that she played a key role in getting King Inge to actually step up and do something about his brothers who were trying to take the power from him. So, when King Inge Krokrygg arrived in Bergen in 1155, he brought with him a whole army. Sigurd Munn was already there in Bergen when Inge Krokrygg arrived, but Øystein Haraldsson took forever to meet up. And while they waited, the feud already started between Inge Krokrygg and Sigurd Munn, where Sigurd Munn killed many of Inge Krokrygg's men in Bergen. Inge Krokrygg did obviously not like this, and at the strong advisement from his mother and Gregorius Dagsson, Inge Krokrygg, with a group of men led by Gregorius, marched on a farm where Sigurd Munn was drinking that night. Here they attacked him, and when Sigurd finally prayed for peace, leaving the cover of the farmhouse, he was struck by a sword and died. When the third king, Øystein Haraldsson, finally arrived, he saw what had happened and immediately prayed for peace. Inge Krokrygg agreed, and there would be no more king's blood spilt at Bergen that year. Though Øystein Haraldsson had called for peace, the years following were anything but peaceful. Tensions would just keep on rising. And in these years, Øystein Haraldsson even burned down Gregorius Dagsson's farm. The whole thing would lead to a new peace treaty in 1156. But the problem was, Inge Krokrygg held all the cards this time. He had way more land and a much bigger army, so he came with all the demands. This made Øystein Haraldsson very angry, and the whole peace treaty was turned into a bloodbath between Inge Krokrygg and Øystein Haraldsson's men.
The two brothers were tired of this half-peace, half-war situation, so they wanted a real, tangible battle to settle the dispute. Inge Krokrygg had 80 ships and Øystein Haraldsson had 45 ships. But the problem was that when it came to it, when the two forces were to meet and battle, no one of Øystein Haraldsson's men wanted to stand with him, and Øystein had to flee, where he at last, in the east of Norway, was caught and a cross was chopped on his back, where he died. The two kings opposing Inge Krokrygg was now dealt with, and Inge was now the one true king of Norway. But everyone didn't see it like that. Enter Sigurd Haraldsson. Sigurd Haraldsson was one of the lords who fought alongside Øystein and Sigurd Munn in the battles prior to the king's death. Sigurd Haraldsson led the remaining people of the opposing forces under a new king, Håkon Herdebrei. Now, like I said, King Sigurd Munn was a very horny guy, and it is said in the sagas that when Sigurd Munn rode across the fields, he rode by a farmhouse where he could hear some lovely ladies singing from within. Here he just went in and did as he wanted, and that's how Håkon Herdebrei was born.
Håkon Herdebrei was only 10 years old at the time, and Inge Krokrygg's forces heavily outnumbered the opposing faction. So, Sigurd Haraldsson took Håkon Herdebrei and his men and fled to Sweden. Here in the Götaland province, they would gather more men to bolster their forces.
Gregorius took his armies to Konghelle, an area that bordered Götaland, where he then set up his defenses in case any opposition would come that way. Later, Håkon Herdebrei's army would march at Gregorius. Here they would battle in Konghelle, where Gregorius noted how big an army Håkon Herdebrei actually had. According to the sources, it seems that Gregorius still won and Håkon Herdebrei had to flee to Trøndelag. And it is around Easter in 1159, Håkon Herdebrei is crowned King of Norway by the lords of Trøndelag.
The two kings would spend the following years battling in Konghelle, until one fateful day. In the winter of 1161, Gregorius and his men would battle the army of Håkon Herdebrei on a frozen river. Here, Gregorius Dagsson would fall to a sword and die.
It is said that when news of Gregorius' death reached King Inge Krokrygg, he broke down, crying like a child after losing his best friend, he who had held the country in his hands for so long. And just a month later, Håkon Herdebrei's army reached Oslo, where Inge Krokrygg's last forces remained. Here, in a battle on the ice outside of Oslo, Inge Krokrygg died. Just like the lords of Norway had led an army in King Inge's name just 25 years prior to kill his uncle Magnus Blinde, King Inge's nephew, Håkon Herdebrei, had now an army led against him. Håkon Herdebrei was now the one true king of Norway, and Sigurd Haraldsson, who had helped Håkon get the crown, was now anointed Jarl. Håkon now seemed to have no one left to oppose him. But wait, didn't I mention someone? Oh yeah, Erling Skakke. I hope you remember him. He has a plan, and he is not backing down that easily. Thank you so much for watching through this whole video. I hope you enjoyed the Three Kings squabble, and I can't wait to tell you what comes next. If you missed my previous video, you probably were a bit confused right now, so I would recommend clicking here. And if you want to watch anything else, you could click right here. Be sure to check in for part 3 as we continue on this 100-year warring period. Stankilson.
Smash that like button. Click that bell. Don't forget to click below and subscribe to SSS Studios. Da kan du putte det på hver video.